I'd like to introduce Jay Martin, who is the Principal Director for our Office of Mission and Capability Support.
Good morning. There's a unique group here around. I see operators, I see veterinarians, I see industry, I see trainers, I see DHS folks. I'm pretty excited about this group here today, especially for this TIDES event. Given my operational background, and I come from the fire service, and I won't get into the detail there, but if something bad happens, leave through that door, follow me. All right, the thing that says exit to get out of here, usually I like to tell people and remind them how to leave a building. As Megan said, my name is Jay Martin, and I am the Principal Director of Mission Capability Support. So what does that mean to you? We are the office within Science Technology Directorate that manages all of the requirements for research and development for DHS components and our first responder community, of which our canine detection program is a big portion of the portfolio. I'm not going to talk to you about interesting things today around what you've come here to hear. I'm going to give you context of what Don Roberts, the program manager, is going to talk about the canine program and how it fits into S&T. And hopefully those of you who have a broader interest in what we're doing around industry engagement and outreach will tell you we want to do this type of event for a number of our strategic programs in our program areas. No slides, so I'm going to use a lot of estimated numbers and information, and I didn't want to put it on a slide deck. So many of you know about S&T, but for those who don't, we are the research and development arm for the Department of Homeland Security. Our budget kind of fluctuates, but right now, this fiscal year, we're looking to execute about $350 million in research and development projects through the requirements and the program management that my office provides. We do that a number of ways. First, we have about 600 federal and contract support, most in the DC area, but we do have people sprinkled all over the country and internationally. We operate mainly through contracts to do research and development. We don't do a lot of science in DC, but DHS Science Technology does operate 5 laboratories, and they're focused on areas where you would think we focus on, which is biological, chemical, aviation security, radiological areas. We also invest a lot of money in academic research through our centers of excellences, and we have 10 COEs across the country at different universities that focus on a number of principal areas where DHS has an interest. And we also do a lot of work with industry, of which this is a piece of that. We've got some remote offices and people out in Silicon Valley, and everybody kind of rushed out there a few years ago. They're taking that program and trying to expand it across the whole of the US. But that gets us to industry to be able to communicate what DHS needs and what DHS is going to invest in and what we can't afford to invest in. And I'll give you a little context of why that is. Our process for understanding what our research agenda or what we're going to do annually comes through integrated product teams, where we bring in our component, and there are 8 operational and a number of headquarters offices, to tell us what they need in terms of technology and science in the future. And through these IBTs, we generate a list of areas we want to do investment on behalf of DHS. And most of you are pretty familiar with the mission space of DHS, and it's huge, right? We are an all-hazard organization. And we do everything from Arctic research in the Coast Guard up in the Arctic Gap, to drug smuggling in the Caribbean, to TSA's passenger screening, to FEMA's disaster response, to CIS's immigration stuff, and data analytics and biometrics, and $350 million in no way will close the gap for technology. So part of our IPT process is prioritizing by component where the department, the US government, and the S&T want to put their investments. But that leaves a long list of things which we cannot cover in terms of either developing new technology or even discovering what's out there. These types of events give us an opportunity to talk to industry about what we need but we can't afford. This current fiscal year IPT process generated 150 new high priority gaps for the Department of Homeland Security and our state and local partners, which we invest research and development dollars in. That's a big list. And we're doing that with ongoing research. It takes up about 3/4 of our budget, but I'd say we're looking at somewhere in the ballpark of about $60 million of new investment this fiscal year. So enough about money. We have a huge need. We can't fill it. We need to talk to the community about how do they support and help us do that. To give you context about what Don is going to come up and talk about this canine detection program, to give it context about what our R&D portfolio looks like, I have to tell you a little bit about what we're doing today. So we have currently about 350 different research and development activities ongoing in science technology. And when I stepped into the program, I was like, wow, it's very hard to get your arms around 350 things you're doing, let alone measure your impact, right? How are you improving capability? What are you delivering? So through a team of leadership, we talked about how do we bring these together into strategic program areas, areas where there's a high interest, there's cross-cutting needs across the department, we've been investing in it for a long time, or it's a problem that's endearing. We're going to have this forever, like airline security. So we were able to bring together from 350 discrete projects and activities down to about 24 strategic program areas. Detection Canine is one of those areas. It has a high priority for the department, for our Transportation Security Administration, and our state and local law enforcement, and Congress has an interest in it. So they gave us money that said, you will spend $12 million a year on canine detection over 5 years. That's a $60 million program in an area that all of you, because you're here, have an interest in. So we have the resource. And Don's going to talk to you a little bit about what his plans are, but I think there's a lot of area where you can inform the program about either needs or capabilities or technology or approaches to the program, what's going on. I talked about the requirements for this Detection Canine program, principally for S&T. We get our detection requirements from TSA. But every component in DHS has a working dog program. So Don's beginning to open the aperture to talk about not just Detection Canine, but what are we doing about the disaster response and all the FEMA dogs? What are we doing about Secret Service and their gun dogs? And what are we doing about cadaver dogs? And any working dog speciality, the genetics of breeding are probably similar across those working dog areas. So how do we bring them together in this Detection Canine program? So to give a little bit of an idea beyond, and this by no means is comprehensive, but a little bit of an idea beyond the Detection Canine. This is one of 24, but logically you all can think about areas where technology is evolving, where we would put a strategic focus, and 5G is one. Not only the use of a 5G network, but the security requirements and protocols we would have to consider as government users, as well as state and locals, to use the 5G network. Biometrics and identity management. That's an area where we really need to look across DHS and the state and locals and begin to navigate privacy, civil rights, civil liberties, other issues involved with biometrics and identity management. One area that kind of has a little bit of an overlap with your interest is personal protective equipment. So we invest a considerable amount of money in protective equipment, not so much for law enforcement, because DOJ's got that covered, but in responder rescue, emergency medical services, and the fire service. One big one that we're all touched at least in some way, opioid fentanyl detection. We are leaning into this pretty hard to figure out how we catch this stuff coming into the country through our express mail and our ports. Right? Not so much the investigation piece or the distribution in the country, but how is it getting in, and can we detect it? And finally, an area where we're spending a lot of time and money is in counter UAS. Right? This problem of how do we identify, track, mitigate, and kill unmanned aerial system safely around soft targets or crowded places or around areas where there's national security concerns. So that, I think I just wanted to give you a broad idea of what S&T does, how Don's program fits in context to our portfolio, how we support not only DHS users, but state and locals. One thing I would probably stress too is our need to do much more interagency cooperation across the federal government, because we're not the only program doing working dog investments. So there's others out there that we could certainly leverage in terms of standards or training or things, and I would offer that as an opportunity to explore. But thank you for your time. Really appreciate your interest and your involvement. You all showing up, and I'm kind of surprised. We were expecting, I was somewhere around a dozen people. So this is pretty surprising that we had the turnout we do. And thank you, and hopefully you have a good day.